All right. Thanks very much for coming to my talk today, everyone. I'm going to be talking a very, very basic level about personal finance and why it's important and so on. And we're going to try and cover this stuff because it's important. So the why, right? So personal finance, I believe, is basically it's the foundation of your life. So if you sort it out and you have a solid financial foundation, then you can actually do the other stuff that you want to do and you don't really have to think about money too much. But if you don't sort it out and your personal finances are unstable and you're worrying about money, then that is taking time and energy from the things that maybe you want to do. So really, this is kind of like health. If your health is not okay, then you can't do anything else. And if your personal finances are not okay, then you can't do anything else. So it's really important to get this fixed and to an acceptable standard, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can go off and do whatever you think is important. But you need that foundation, I think. And the goal of personal finance is to get clear on everything, set up systems, automate everything so that you don't really have to think about it. You don't have to make decisions. You just follow the plan, and then you can get on with your life. Because most people are not interested in this stuff, right? It's not interesting for most people. So you don't want to think about it all the time. You just want to set up a good system and let it sort things out for you. So 3 whys. So I got started with personal finance when I lost my job. And that is when most people start worrying about money, when something changes, right? You lose your job or you have children or you get divorced or something big changes and you start thinking, oh, okay, so my money setup is not okay. And that's when most people start thinking about it, when there's a crisis. But it's a lot less stressful if you sort it out before there's a crisis. And then you can deal with the crisis and not worry about money. So for me, I lost my job and we had a horrible kind of 6 months to a year of really worrying about money and being stressed about money. Whereas if I'd had a financial foundation, that wouldn't have been stressful. And actually, I lost my job last year as well. And that was fine because I had the financial foundation that I didn't need the job for money and we could transition into a different style of life. But the first time I lost my job was incredibly stressful. I had to tell my wife and she kind of collapsed and we had a very stressful few months trying to worry about rent and food and paying for things. So that's why I got interested in personal finance, because I saw that situation and I thought, right, this is my fault because I'm not ready and I need to make some changes. But I don't know what the changes are. So I started, reading and asking questions and so on. The reason I started RetireJapan was a few years after that. Once I was on a better path and I was kind of had a better understanding of things, I was talking to a friend of mine about his retirement plans. And he was doing something. So he was saving and investing for retirement through an advisory company in Tokyo. And I was talking to him and I got kind of angry because I thought the company was taking advantage of my friend. They were charging him very high fees and they weren't giving him good advice. And I got so angry about that I went home and I registered the website, the domain, RetireJapan, and I started the website that day. And that's, if you go back on the blog to the first post, it's about that. And the reason I'm here today is because I think this stuff is so important and it can transform people's lives. So I want to reach as many people as possible. So not just the people who are on the call today or that might get this video, but I want them to tell their friends and their family about RetireJapan and so on, where they can get information and really get started on building a decent financial foundation. This is my little bio. I'll let you read it. Basically, I came here a bit like Brian. So I came here on Jet in 2000. And I was a Jet for 3 years. And then I was a Jet supervisor for 4 years. And then I was unemployed for a year. I was teaching part-time at universities. And then I got a university job for 13 years. And last year, I finished working at the university. And since then, I've kind of been doing various things. So I run RetireJapan. I help my wife with an English school. So I'm quite plugged into the English teaching community and the school owner community. And I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a very bad idea when you're my age. So I had meniscus surgery last month, which is why I'm standing on one leg at the moment. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the principles of personal finance, because personal finance can be enormous, right? It's fractal. You can go into the details forever, right? You can start learning about taxes, and then you can learn more about taxes and more about taxes, and then you become an accountant, and then you become, a specialized accountant, and it never ends. And that's why most people get intimidated by personal finance, because it seems so big, right? There's so much to learn about taxes, about investing, about saving, everything. But if you understand the basic principles, which are very, very easy, you don't need all that other information. So the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle, very much applies to personal finance. So this principle says that a small amount of the work will provide most of the benefits, right, in various things. So, if you advertise, then a small number of your advertisements will bring in most of the customers and the others won't, right? And the same here. So if you learn a little bit about personal finance, you get most of the benefit. You don't need to learn all of it. You just need to learn that small, effective amount. So today we're not going to talk about details so much because it would take a really long time. Instead, I just want to talk about various things. And then, so if you see something that's interesting, just make a quick note and then come to the website. You'll find more information, or you'll be able to ask questions in the forum and so on. So the first principle, or the second one, because we talked about Pareto. So this is something that is really basic in economics. So opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is basically, if you do one thing, you can't do another thing, right? So you can have anything, but you can't have everything. So you have to decide, right? And the problem is many people don't decide what they want. I didn't until I got to my 30s and lost my job and decided that security and having options was more important than anything else. So you probably know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think all teachers know this, right? So it's talking about what people need, right? So, and it says that if you don't have the lower level thing, you can't have the higher level thing. So if you don't have air, you can't have love because it's irrelevant. You're just trying to breathe at that point, right? So you need to meet your needs at each level before you can go higher. And, for students, it's stuff like, if they're too hot, they can't concentrate. So you need to fix the temperature first. Or if they're thirsty, or if they're upset, you fix those, and then they can engage their thinking and things like that. So, and I think for money, there's a similar hierarchy of needs. So this is my version. So this is RetireJapan's hierarchy of financial needs. And we start off with living expenses, your basic living expenses, rent, food, transportation, maybe communications nowadays. That's a basic expense. And then above that, you have security. And for me, security is having, savings for an emergency, having insurance, things like that, so that if something happens, you can deal with it. It doesn't destroy your life, basically. And above that, we have freedom, which is the ability to have choices. So if you don't like your job, you have enough money to quit your job and find a new job. Or perhaps if you want to do something else, but it doesn't pay as well, you can do that. And that's freedom. And above that, we have things like luxury. This is buying things you don't need, basically. And at the top, I think we have like charity and legacy. So once people have everything, then they start thinking about helping other people, giving money to other people. And the problem for most people is that they don't think about security and freedom. They just jump straight to luxury. And if you spend money on luxury without making sure that you have security and freedom, then at some point you're going to have a problem. You're not going to have that financial foundation. You're going to be in trouble later on. This is a really useful basic rule, which is how to think about spending. So this is I've seen this quite a bit in America. Maybe it's an American concept, but basically 50% of your income or less should go on your living expenses. So your rent, your food, your school fees, that kind of thing. 20% or more should go on your savings and investments. And then the other 30% or less should go on your spending, things that are fun or luxuries or going on holiday, going to a restaurant, that kind of thing. And if you stick to this rule, you'll be fine, I think. So if you do this is a very, very, very basic thing. If you do this, you won't have money problems, I think. You'll be pretty much financially okay for the rest of your life. There's only really 5 things we need to think about for personal finance. If you sort out these 5 things, you'll be fine. So first one's spending, second one's saving, third one is investing, and then we have insurance and pensions, basically. And a lot of people are unclear or intimidated by one or more of these. But if you can if you can get all 5 of these to an acceptable level, to like a B-, you'll be fine. So you don't have to be amazing at any of these, but you can't afford to be bad at them. So you can't be a D. You can't have a D in any of these areas because it will put you in a dangerous situation at some point. And of course, the first one is spending. And actually, nothing else matters if you don't get this right. So Mike Tyson, probably the boxer, or Johnny Depp, the actor. Both of these people made hundreds of millions of dollars. And both of them ended up bankrupt, where their debts were bigger than their savings. So it doesn't matter how much money you make if you spend it all, right? So spending is the most important thing to get right. And spending's a mental thing. So it's all about your mindset. And the key is to spend consciously, right? So to decide what you want and then make your decisions based on that. Because if you don't decide, you will fail to master this and it won't work. One thing that many people find very useful is to pay yourself first, which means when you get your salary, you pay your savings and you pay your investing before you pay anything else. It's like a bill. So every month you have a bill that is, I will save this much money and I will invest this much money. And the best time to do that is when you get your salary or your income. Because many people think, oh, I'll just wait until the end of the month and I'll save whatever money is left over. And of course, there's never any money left over. So instead, as soon as you get the money, put the money away for yourself. And the best way to do that is to use a separate bank account. So you have one bank account for your spending, one bank account for your saving, a different bank account. And you move the money over there as soon as you get it. Some people find it useful to track their spending. I think I've done this a couple of times. I don't find it useful to do this all the time, but it's very useful to do this for a couple of months. So for a couple of months, get a notebook and just write down everything you spend, or get a spreadsheet and just track everything you spend, or get an app like Money Tree or Money Forward in Japan. There's 2 famous ones that tracks everything you spend, and just look at that and see what you spend money on, because a lot of people don't know what they spend money on. And it's quite easy to miss. It's like, oh my God, how much money am I spending on coffee, right? Or how much money am I spending on subscriptions online that I don't use? And you'll find things that you can stop spending money on quite easily. And then the other thing that some people find useful is to make a budget, which is to make a plan on what you're going to spend. So you might say, okay, so I have 200,000 yen. I'm going to spend 20,000 yen on restaurants every month. And if I spend more than that, I will stop going to restaurants. Right? And that's a budget. So I don't find this useful, but some people find it very useful. You can find lots of information online about budgets. Basically, with spending, if you're disciplined now, you won't need to be disciplined later. Right? If you sort out your spending now, when you're older and you're looking to retire, or you're looking to help your children do something, or you're looking to do some exciting things, you'll be able to, because you sorted out your spending now. I wish I'd sorted out my spending in my 20s, but I did it in my 30s instead. And now is the best time to do that. Now, with saving, the most important thing is to have emergency cash saved up. So this is an emergency fund. Some people might not need an emergency fund, but you're probably not one of those people. You probably need an emergency fund. So an emergency fund should be in cash or money that you can access instantly. Should be in a separate bank account. So again, this is different from any other accounts you have. So you might have a spending account, you might have a saving account. This is a separate account. This is the emergency account. And most people need 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. So that's your basic spending. So rent, food, insurance, healthcare, etc. Well, that amount times 3 or times 6 or times whatever you think is going to be enough. Now, in Japan, most non-Japanese people, their big emergency expenses are to suddenly have to fly to a different country. That can be incredibly expensive, and it could happen anytime. If family members ill or something happens at home, you pretty much have to go and you have to pay for it there and then. Other ones are things like car trouble, any kind of repair, being in hospital for a long time, losing your income, having to pay for medical costs, losing your job is a big one. All of these things are horrible and stressful, but they are 10 times as stressful if you haven't got the money. If you have the money, they're still stressful, but they're just not stressful about money. It makes it much easier to deal with the situation rather than also deal with, how do I get this money? How do I pay it back? And so on. Also, if possible, please try and keep a little bit of cash at home in case of disasters. So the 3/11 earthquake in Sendai, power went out immediately. So of course you can't use credit cards, you can't use digital money, you need to use cash. And you want to have small bills for this, because no one wants to give you change for 10,000 yen when, the power's out and everything's broken. So I would say at least 50 to 100,000 yen, probably in small bills, just in case of emergencies. Right, investing. So investing is once you have sorted out your spending, once you have sorted out your saving, then you want to start thinking about investing. And the purpose of investing is to have your money grow. Savings don't grow. So investing allows you work and your money works as well. And by investing, we can grow our money slowly over time, and that can end up quite nice over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And the key to investing is to do it slowly, I think. I always recommend people, when they're starting out, there's no need to rush into it. There's no need to invest everything tomorrow. You want to start slowly and learn and figure out how you deal with investing. And by doing it, you're going to learn, and that will allow you to get the skills and the knowledge that you need. So there's no need to rush. You want to start with a small amount, and you want to start doing it regularly over time. So every month you make a small investment, you learn more about it, and then over time you increase the amount of that small monthly investment. And you want to invest in something sensible. So what's sensible? So the most sensible thing, I think, is cheap, diversified index funds. So cheap means the fees are not too high. And in Japan, fees under 0.2% a year is cheap. And this is what you want. Diversified means the world stock market. That's about as diversified as it gets. If you buy the world stock market, your investment thesis, so your idea is that the world economy will grow over time. I think that's fairly likely to happen. And by buying the whole world, you're basically saying, I don't know which country is going to have a successful economy, which companies are going to do well, but I will own all of the big ones. And on average, we'll get a decent return. So the historical return for the world stock market is about 8% a year. So over time, that means that your money will double every 10 years or so. So after 10 years, it will double. After 20 years, it will quadruple. After 30 years, it will be 8 times as much. And this basically really can make a big difference to your savings. So if you save your money in the bank, it won't grow and it will lose value over time to inflation. But if you invest your money, it will grow, it will keep up with inflation, and it should grow a bit more than inflation. And an index fund is a mutual fund or an ETF. And in Japan, mutual funds are slightly better than ETFs at the moment. If you're in Japan, you should be able to use Japanese tax advantaged things like iDeCo and NISA. NISA is getting a lot of publicity recently because it's changing next year. They're really improving the system next year. So this is a great time to get started. So iDeCo is a kind of pension. So it's a self-managed pension, basically. And how it works is you pay in every month. The minimum is 5,000 yen. The maximum depends on what kind of pension you're paying. It can be 12 or 23 or 68,000 yen a month for the maximum. And you have to decide what to invest in. So you choose which funds the money goes into. And the money is invested in those funds. It grows over time. And then eventually, after you reach the age of 60, you can cash in, you can sell everything and get the money. And hopefully it will have grown. You'll get a tax break at the end. And the money you put in reduces your income taxes. So it's a very nice system for people who work, people who pay income tax. This is a really good idea to do this if you're going to be here until you're 60. NISA is an investing account. So this one, your money's not locked away. You can get your money back anytime. So NISA is for investing. You can invest tax-free. The new NISA from 2024 is up to 3.6 million yen a year. So for most people, that's plenty. They're not going to be able to fill this up. Right now, NISA is 1.2 million yen maximum. So they're tripling the annual allowance, and there's no tax on profits. So normally when you invest in Japan and you make a profit and you sell your investment, you have to pay capital gains tax, which is 20.315%. So about 20%. But in a NISA account, there's no tax to pay. So even if your investment doubles or triples, you sell it, you keep all the profit yourself. So this is fantastic. If you're going to invest, you may as well invest in NISA. Now, unfortunately, if you are a US citizen and your children, if they are US citizens, there are lots of restrictions on what you can do. Please go to RetireJapan and look at the US citizen page if you want to learn more about that. And all these restrictions are basically from the US side. So they don't apply to people who are not US citizens, only US citizens. Okay, super important is insurance. So the purpose of insurance is to protect you from catastrophic damage. So you don't need it for small things. So for example, if you have a bicycle it doesn't matter if someone steals your bicycle because you can replace the bicycle easily, right? It's not catastrophic damage. So we want to make sure that we get the insurance we need and we don't get the insurance that we don't need. And Japan is often over-insured. So in Japan, especially after the bubble, many people are distrustful of the stock market. And so they think it's safer to buy insurance than to invest in the stock market. So basically, they pay the insurance company to invest for them, which means that the returns will be much lower. So generally speaking, don't use insurance to invest. Use insurance to protect yourself and invest to invest. So these are important insurance things, right? Life insurance, if you have a family, if you have people who are depending on you, life insurance is important. But generally speaking, you want to get cheap term life insurance. This is called teiki hoken in Japanese. So term, basically, not the whole life insurance. Whole life insurance is much more expensive. Whole life insurance is much more profitable for insurance companies. And every company will try and sell you whole life insurance instead of term life insurance. But it's not in your best interest, generally. Car insurance, if you drive, please get unlimited third-party coverage for car insurance because the risk is too high, right? If you have an accident and someone gets hurt or someone gets injured, you want to have unlimited cover for that. A few years ago, I was visiting a friend, and when I was parking my car, I backed a little bit too far and I hit their house, and a support pillar was broken, and I think half the house kind of came out of filter. So fortunately, our insurance covered that. It was, I think it cost about 15 million yen to fix. But the insurance company covered that for me instead of me having to pay it. So yeah, definitely have insurance for cars. And recently, bicycle insurance. So bicycle insurance is compulsory in most of Japan now. And it's just a good idea. Bicycle insurance is very cheap. I got mine for about 2,000 yen for a year. And this again covers, anyone that you have an accident with. It covers lawyers. It covers, it's basically peace of mind. So if you ride a bicycle, get bicycle insurance. Travel insurance is fairly cheap. I think if you go abroad, it's worth having travel insurance just in case. Earthquake and fire insurance if you own your house. Now, medical insurance in Japan, I think, is not necessary. So everyone in Japan is part of Kenko Hoken, either Kokumin Kenko Hoken or Shakai Hoken, and that covers your medical costs. So you have to pay the 30%. But that 30% is capped based on your income. So you don't have to pay more than probably around 100,000 yen in a month for that. Anything above that, you don't have to pay. The country will cover it, basically. So I had insurance. I had a operation last month, and my maximum capped amount was about 110,000 yen. So anything above that was just covered by the insurance. So it's quite difficult to get yourself in a kind of going broke situation in Japan because of that cap. So it's 30%, but only up to a certain amount, and anything above that is covered completely. So medical insurance in Japan does not cover your medical costs. Instead, they just give you a per diem. So every day you're in hospital, you get a certain amount. You might get a hospitalization amount, and you might get an amount for certain surgeries or diseases. But generally speaking, it's not necessary. In my situation, I've had lots of injuries, broken bones and things. And I would say I've received about as much money from medical insurance as I've paid to medical insurance. So it's zero. So instead of getting medical insurance, it could be a good idea just to invest the extra money. And then if something happens, you can pay that from that invested amount. And you'll probably come out ahead by doing that. But, for peace of mind, if you want to get medical insurance, it's not a bad thing, but it's not necessary. I think the first 4 on this list are necessary, and medical insurance is kind of like, it might be nice to have, but not necessary. Right, pensions. So as with anything else, it's really important to understand your pension in Japan or elsewhere. And also to understand that pensions are different from investments. So some people think about the return they're getting from their pension, but I think that's the wrong way to think about it, because pensions are not really investments. They're more like a tax. They're a social benefit for the country. And they basically give you a base income for as long as you live. So for me, a pension is more valuable than an investment, because if I get older, I'm looking at my wife's parents, they have dementia and they're not able to deal with things anymore. So for them, a regular payment every month from the government is much more valuable than an investment that maybe they aren't able to manage anymore. So pensions are really a good thing and helpful, but Nenkin in Japan is not generous at all. So it's very important to be aware of how much money you're likely to get from Nenkin. So I regularly talk to people, Japanese and non-Japanese, who don't know how much Nenkin they will get. And then when we look at the numbers, they are invariably shocked by how little their Nenkin is going to be. So Kokumin Nenkin, the maximum you can get right now is 65,000 yen a month. And Kosei Nenkin is likely to be 2 or 3 times that, depending on what your salary was like. So maybe 150, maybe if you're very lucky, 200,000 yen a month. Now, for most people, that's not a lot of money. And so if you want to have a standard of living that's higher than that, then you have to save and you have to invest to supplement that. Every year, you should be getting a statement about your Nenkin called the Nenkin Teikibin. And this should arrive around your birthday. I normally get mine a couple of weeks before my birthday, unless you've opted out. And if you've opted out, you can see the digital version on this website, the nenkin.go.jp website. And that's a great website. You can register and see all your Nenkin information. For Nenkin, whether it's Kokumin Nenkin or Kosei Nenkin, you have to pay in 120 months to be able to receive a pension. That's the vesting amount. And this changed about 6 years ago. Before that, it was 25 years before you could get a pension. But now it's only 10 years, which is a huge improvement, especially for non-Japanese people who might have come here later in life and therefore wouldn't have been able to qualify for a pension before. For Kokumin Nenkin, it's 480 months, so 40 years of payments to get a full pension. You do have the option to take the pension early from the age of 60 or late, so as late as 75. And the normal age is 65. Now, my advice is to take it as late as possible, because the later you take your pension, the higher it will be. And that is insurance against living for a long time. If you can wait until you're 70 to start taking your pension will be like, I think 42% higher than it would have been from 65. And you'll get that higher amount for the rest of your life. And so that is very valuable, I think, because there is a small chance that you'll live to 100, 110, 115. And at that point, you want to have a higher pension coming in every month for years and years and years beyond, So this is a Nenkin Teikibin. This is my Nenkin Teikibin from a few weeks ago. My birthday's in September. So let's look at the really important pieces of information. So this number 1 up here, this is koremade no hokenryo, right? So the amount you've paid so far. So that's important because Later on, when we get to number 3, there's 2 ways they write this. So first of all, let's look at number 1 first. So this is how much you've paid in. So number 1 is kokumin nenkin. So this is the freelancer pension that you pay every month, 16,000 yen a month, flat rate. So I've paid in almost 700,000 yen into that. And then this is Kosei Nenkin, the kind of salaryman employer pension. And this is Komuin. So this is the public servant Nenkin. So, and these 2 include the company match. So when you pay into Kosei Nenkin, you pay half, the company pays half. So that's why it's more generous, but it's much more expensive. So I've paid in about 10 million yen into Nenkin so far, over 23 years. And then these are the months. So remember, we need 120 months to get a pension. I've got almost 300 here. And that's broken down into Kosei and public servant and kokumin nenkin. And then the most important part is this bit at the bottom, which is your projection. So this is how much money you're going to get based. So this one is koremade. So this is based on contributions so far. That's my pension. This is an annual amount. So I will get 1.151 million yen a year, which is just under 100,000 yen a month. Now, that's not a lot of money. You know, you could maybe live on that. Maybe. I'd find it difficult to live on this. But because it's koremade, I'm going to keep paying in. I'm 46 at the moment, so I've got another maybe 14 to 19 years left, I guess, under the current system. So hopefully this amount will go up a little bit, but it's not going to go up a huge amount. So I'm expecting maybe, if I'm lucky, to get 1.5 million yen in Nenkin eventually, which again is not a lot of money. Now, once you get to the age of 55, I believe it's 55, this changes. So instead of being based on contributions so far, this will change to assuming you continue to pay at the current rate. So once you get to 55, this number is unlikely to get any bigger because they're assuming you're going to keep paying in at that rate. That's basically your projection. But yeah, you need to understand what this number is so that you can plan and make sure you have enough money, including this, to live the life that you want to live. You don't want to get to 65, open the first pension payment and be like, how am I going to live on this? Right? It's really important to be aware of it in advance. Now, some people also will get a foreign pension, and that's going to help, obviously. So it's important to understand any foreign pensions you might be eligible for. So if you're from the UK or you've worked in the UK at some point, you might be able to pay voluntary contributions. So you can pay into the UK pension and get a UK pension in retirement. And this is fantastic because at the moment, these voluntary contributions are ridiculously cheap. So if you can pay into the UK pension, that's the best investment I'm aware of anywhere in the world right now. The return is ridiculous. So yeah, if you might be eligible, please go to the RetireJapan forum. We've got lots of information about this. If you're from the US, so US Social Security, you might be able to get a US pension, so a Social Security pension. You might be able to combine your US Social Security with Nenkin, either to get a pension from the US or to get a pension from Japan. So definitely look into that. And for other countries, I'm not sure, you'd have to look into your own country's arrangements. Often you can find information on embassy websites. They'll provide this. Or you can look online. Right, so if you need more information, you can come to the RetireJapan website. We've got information, we've got a blog, we've got a very active forum where you can sign up to ask questions, or you can just read it without signing up. We have a YouTube channel that we've been putting a lot of effort into. I have a coaching service if people want extra help. And then also on Reddit, there's a very nice community at Japan Finance as well. That's a good place to ask tax questions, especially.